can only do one thing at once. That's just the way they are. And men don't have like something that we lack understanding in is emotional intelligence. You know, when we think intelligence, what do we think of? We think someone's got academic intelligence. You know, the guy knows Pythagoras theorem. The guy can do calculus really well. The guy can, you know, he's good with uh, complex numbers or whatever. So this person's smart. We know that's intelligence. But we have this thing called emotional intelligence that people don't see. And women are really good at that. Men aren't. For example, a guy will come home and his wife will say, "Why is your brother upset with you?" And he'll say, "No, he's not upset." She says, "Yes, he is." "How's he upset?" "Well, he hardly had his dinner yesterday." "What do you mean?" "You know, he hardly touched his plate." They can pick up on these little intricacies and little things that men can't see. Generally, we're talking about. And then a guy can only see when someone's arm falls off or something. He goes, "Oh my God, this person's upset." This is the person when the guy. So sometimes a man will say to his wife, "Is everything okay?" And she'll say, "Yeah." And he'll say, "Wow, everything's okay." But he doesn't realize that his death sentence or death warrant's about to be signed. But he hasn't perceived this yet. And this is why communication is essential. This is why we need to talk with one another so we can see when there is a problem. And when someone talks to you, you need to give them your your undivided attention. You've got to really listen to them. You know, and a problem can be avoided by saying the right thing. You know, sometimes you want to give a response because you want to be smart. When I say smart, you want to be cunning with your response, or sometimes you might give and a big problem a lot of people do when one person's a bit more articulate than another, they may disparage the other person. They may talk down to them. If you're condescending in nature to the other person, it's very offensive. And when you do talk like that, they begin to resent you for this. I could be on the phone and my wife calls me. Okay? As she calls me, I'm talking to her, then someone else calls. And they'll say, "Hold on, I need to get this call." So I divert the call. So I talk on the other line. The next time I'm talking to someone, she calls me, but I continue the conversation and I don't divert to her. The next time we communicate, she says, "Why is it when we talk and someone else calls, you will divert to them? But when you're talking to someone and I call, you won't do that?" See, what some guy will say is, "Hold on, all right, she wants to get me, I'm going to win this battle." Because people have got important things to tell me, they're not going to nag on the phone. Wrong answer. Okay? If you start with that, you respond like that, you're going to go to war. This is how marriages get destroyed, response like that. The correct response, and it's the real response, it's not lip service, because you can't really do without her and she can't do without you. That's a reality. The real response that you should be given is because the other people I'm talking to are smaller matters that I need to get out of the way so I can fully focus when I'm talking to what's more important, which is you. This is the way you should, because that is the truth. That's service. She is what's most important, and you can't live without her. That is the reality. We may think otherwise because of our egos. Now, when I put anyone down or I say things like that or I dig up, all I do is make more problems and create more agitation. So communication must be loving. I must talk to them like I spoke when I first wanted to marry them. When I was courting, how was I talking? It was nice. This is how a relationship should be. When I see there's a problem, I need to get away with them. I need to have this time with them. This is how I revive and reinvigorate my relationship. And when there is a fault, I need to admit to it. Not everything. Don't sit there and keep saying, "Oh, astaghfirullah, forgive me." then it becomes useful. When I've done something that's wrong and it's been brought to my attention, and then I say, what, I'm sorry, yeah, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that. And the other person should accept your apology, not dwell on the matter. Now, I mentioned before the position of the man is الرجال قوامون على النساء. The man is the captain of the ship. That's true. But does that mean by the man being a boss, does that mean it's like the boss in the mafia, where he sits down and delegates tasks and the money returns to him? If that is the case, then people have misunderstood what the concept is of being the boss. The Messenger of Allah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, says, Sayyid al-Qawm khadimahum. Sayyid al-Qawm, the master of a people, is what? Their servant. If you want to lead people, you need to serve the people. And this is why people don't like politicians, because they serve themselves. If you notice, if you become a leader, it doesn't mean that I move to Kirribilli House or the White House of the United States and then I start living it up. No. When I start to lead, I lead by example. I need to show that I serve, not that I'm the boss in that manner. I make the decisions, but I'm the first to do these things. I don't sit there saying no one's allowed to, for example, watch a certain TV program, and then I sit and watch that program. Or no one's allowed to drink milk from the carton, and I'm the one that drinks milk from the carton. If I sit there and make rules, and then I'm the first one to violate those rules, then these rules have no bearing on the people. That you're there to be in your house, the man of the house, not the despot of the house, not the monster of the house. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says here, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, خيركم لأهله وأنا خيركم لأهلي. The best of you are those who are best to their wife. Ahl means the family, meaning the wife. Generally, ahl is the wife. And then the ayal are the children. Or sometimes it's in general for all. He says, وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِي. I am the best when it comes to my wife. This is what we're told. To have this kind of treatment when it comes to this. That the woman should feel that way about her husband. And abuse is not always, when we think about abuse is not always physical. Abuse can be mental, it can be emotional. There are a lot of things where you can abuse someone. Remember when I said about condescending and disparaging? When you put someone down, you don't allow them to fix themselves. When you keep telling your wife that she doesn't do anything right, then she will start seeing herself in that way. So you break her down. And then you say, I've never hit my wife, not a day more. You haven't been hitting her. But there's been daggers flying out of your mouth every time you speak. That is there. And that has that effect. And it destroys her psychologically. One of the things is, I need to understand that I need to be a man. And a man is someone that plays what? A supporting role to their family. They help their family. They assist their family. I've never understood a person that goes and drudges at work, as if he's working to the drum beat in a Roman galley, and because he can't bare his teeth there and take out his claws, he comes home and takes his wrath on his wife and his kids. If you can't be a big cat outside, don't come and be a big cat at home. You're lying in the streets. That's where you become a lion. Not when you get home and decide I'm gonna show my prowess here and my power here. This isn't strength. This is taking advantage. When you I know women have contributed to this because they keep screaming equality. We're all the same, which, we can go over this argument day and night. I always say this, people, how many sports do men and women compete against each other? How many sports? One. One Olympic sport where men and women compete against each other, and that's equestrian, because they're all riding horses. But otherwise, they're different. They're not the same. If they were the same, then we'd all be playing rugby league against each other. You think about that. You think about a Jason Tomalolo running at a woman. See what will happen. If he runs through many, breaks them. What's he going to do to a woman? It's a reality. This is physics. It's not being sexist. It's a reality, and people have to concede to this and accept this. And if I'm going to sit there and scream out for equality, you want equality, then, and you want everything to be the same, why isn't there the same amount of women doing steel fixing as there's men? Why isn't there the same amount of women doing scaffolding and formwork and bricklaying as men? Because we're different, and we're created differently. So the women have allowed this also to happen to them because they seek to take the role of a man. And the role of a man and the role of a woman are different in a relationship. One other thing that we are told is to overlook each other's faults. Not sit and pick out each other's faults. In fact, one man said, Ya Rasulullah, how many times should I overlook my wife's faults? He says, Walau sab'ina marra. Even if there's 70 faults in the day, she does 70 wrong things, overlook them. Don't sit there and nitpick. Don't sit there and say, how many times have I told you not to place that there? Or how many? Move it. Don't make an issue out of it. Only make an issue out of the relevant things and the important things in a marriage. And obviously, living in the West, there's a lot of abuse to men and women, unlike in our original countries back home. Usually the women are on the receiving end. But in this country, how we have what they call battered wife syndrome. There's also, even though they don't mention it, but there is battered husband syndrome. There's men that have suffered and have been in abusive relationships because they can't do anything about it. So a woman now can take everything. She'll take the house, she'll take the kids, and that's what will happen. Yeah, and I know when sometimes you speak to women, they say, "Oh, the system doesn't work for us." Yes, it does. If you don't think it works for you, come and do my job and see how many people suffer here. But it makes up for what happens overseas. So there's a bit of a balance in the world. So anyway, the other thing is, for having a successful relationship is, if you look, psychologists will talk about this, and then they consider it a need. It's a necessity. Just as eating and drinking, that is appreciation. Appreciation is so important in a relationship. And when it comes to appreciation, if you say thanks to someone, it makes such a big difference. Have you noticed when you've done something, someone comes up to you and says, "Thank you very much"? It's like, you're on fire and someone pours a glass of cold water on you. It really calms you down. It makes you feel so good that I've worked so hard, but at least someone appreciated it. Someone recognized this. And we may look at the tasks. One of the reasons, if you want to look at why women while we were talking about why females want the roles of males, and you have this problem, is because many years men viewed women's tasks, or women, the tasks, we're not saying the obligations, they used to look at them as menial tasks. They never used to appreciate, well, for example, they'd say, when we talk about housework, people talk about it as if it's nothing. If you think it's nothing, stay at home. Go look after. If you got kids and sit at home with kids, go for it. See how long you last. See how much you actually enjoy them. Kids don't stop. They don't stop. It's not like they just turn off. They don't have, they've got these unlimited energizer batteries that just keep recharging internally. I don't know, they must be solar powered. But at the same time, they just keep going and they don't stop asking for things. And they ask for different things. And whenever you ask them to eat in a certain place, they always eat in the place that you don't want them to eat, and they make it most difficult for you to clean. You have to wash their clothes over and over again. And many men used to look at this as menial tasks. And they used to make it seem as if it was nothing. I need to appreciate this. I come home, I look at my clothes, they're ironed. I used to say, "Thank you." I should say thank you. Thank you for the food you make. Thank you for all these things that appear. And I need to compliment them. Now, this respect and appreciation has to be direct and indirect. Direct by actually expressing my gratitude, indirect by bringing in a gift home. Sometimes you buy something and people, this is what I hate when people go, for example, I don't celebrate any of the occasions. I don't celebrate anniversaries, Valentine's Day, birthdays. People say, why? I go, because you're limiting celebrations to 3, 4 days a week. If you want to appreciate the people around you, you need to appreciate them all the time. It's like you limit all the hard work your mother does to one day, Mother's Day. One day in the year. Every day I need to celebrate that when I bring something home to show appreciation, could be a smallest act or gesture to show that I appreciate what they've done for me. Now, be it their duty or not their duty, sometimes someone does something against their duty, but I still need to show appreciation. Sometimes they do something that's not their duty. I also show appreciation. Do you remember on the first night, I think, or the second night, I mentioned this verse where I said where the Prophet would invoke Allah and ask for Allah to when someone gives sadaqah. This is an example of showing appreciation. That the prophets, by saying it's an obligation on them to pay zakat, is it not? It's an obligation on you to pay your zakat, your hummus, your sadaqat, zakat al-fitr, and I'm talking about the obligatory. Yet the Prophet, Allah says to him, وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ صَلَاتَكَ سَكَنٌ لَهُمْ. Invoke Allah, pray for them, because it makes them feel good. It makes them feel at ease. Why? It gives them this reassurance. It shows that they are appreciated. You know what I mean? It shows they're appreciated. That you appreciate what they have been doing. Even an employee, if you have employees at work and you show them that they are appreciated. If you turn around and say to your employee, well, I pay you well. That's not showing them they're appreciated. They're doing their task and they're doing their job. Show appreciation. Say thank you. Even when, and the thing is, even when you go to a shop, you're paying money, but what do? You say thank you. Why am I saying thank you? Have you ever asked yourself, why do you say thank you when you purchase something from a shop? Why do you say thank you when someone does something? Well, I'm paying for it. It's a service. Well, I'm paying for it. Why do I say thank you? Is it just a lip service? No, it's a reality. You need them. Could you imagine that convenience store that you purchase things from, that you give, imagine he closed. Then you have to drive the extra few kilometers to the next shop. You needed them. Imagine this plumber that comes and fixes something for you, this service, and you're still paying them, but they do a good job. You need to show your gratitude. I need to show this appreciation. So when I sit there and say, well, a husband says to his wife, that's your job, you're my wife, or a woman, or the woman says to the husband, that's your job to provide. When we start talking like that to each other, when we start communicating in this method to each other, we're lying to ourselves. Could you imagine our spouse packed up and walked out? Imagine our spouse just left. What would you do next? You know, sometimes you say, if you want to leave, leave. Imagine she says, okay, I'm leaving. How do you live without them? How do I live without my spouse? Reality. So I need to show this appreciation. I need to be genuine about it. Also, when I look at this, when I come home from work, I don't want to be bombarded. When a man comes home from work, the last thing the man comes home to, he wants to be bombarded. He enters the home and everyone just jumps on him and sees what's going on. The man comes home from his employment. And I'm talking when I say the man comes home, because the man is the one that's supposed to provide for the house. I'm not saying that there are women that are not working, not meaning it in this manner, because then some people like to, when you discuss this subject, they like to do their own ta'wil of what you say. They say that's what he actually meant. No. I mean, so when the man comes home from work, the last thing he wants to be bombarded with everything. He wants to come home and he wants to relax in the manner. So we go down to this situation where we get to the point where we talk about the tasks of a man and a woman in this. Just to touch on it. Generally, the traditional task is the man is the provider and the woman looks after the home. These are what we call traditional tasks. We're not talking about what your obligations are yet. Generally, this was the tasks in the household. Yarhamukumullah. But if you take a look with a narration where Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, he says, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam entered my house. And he said, and Fatima alayhi salam was cooking. She was next to the pot and she was cooking. And he says, this is Imam Ali, he says, and I was sifting the lentils. That's what the hadith says. He was sifting the lentils. Could you imagine you said this hadith to a man 500 years ago or 200 years ago? They said, well, so what? He was actually doing something at home? They would look at it in the worst possible way. He says, I was sifting through the lentils. And then in this hadith, the Prophet says to him, Ya Abul Hasan. And Amir al-Mu'mineen responds by saying, Labbayka ya Rasulallah. Labbayka ya Rasulallah. That's what the hadith says. Then he mentions a very long hadith, but I'm just going to give you the first part of it. But the hadith's too long to narrate. It's way too long. He says, Isma' minni ma aqul. Listen to what I have to say for you. And then he says, in this narration, he says, Ma min rajul. He says, Ma min rajulin yu'inu mra'atahu fi baytiha. He says, any man that assists his wife in the house, in the household duties, إلا كان له بكل شعرة على بدنه عبادة سنة صيام نهارها وقيام ليلها. That if a man assists his wife in the house for every hair that's on his body, obviously because men are generally more hairy. This is why the more hair you have, probably going to get more reward. But Allahu alam. But he's saying this for every hair on their body. He says they get the reward of 1 year of where they worship the nights and fast in the days. You know, we have 3 of these nights a year, Layl al-Qadr, where we worship in the night. If we do, whoever does it the whole night, and whoever fasts in there, we only do 3 of these a year. But for each hair, you get a year. Count how many hairs on your body. This, I will tell you, the whole narration is really long of all the reward. This is just, honestly, the tip of the iceberg if you read the whole narration. This is just for helping in the house. To work together. Once again, it's a companionship. It's a partnership. The whole time you're in a relationship to be happy together. There's an escape clause. If two aren't happy with each other, that's a later discussion about how people can exit from a relationship. I don't have to live like this. Our next point that's important for a relationship to be thriving is an important ingredient in life in general. And that's qana'ah, to be content. To be content in what you have. This is both for men and women. If I sit there and look at so-and-so's wife, what she does for him, and then the woman says, look at so-and-so's husband, what he does for her, this is where our problems are going to begin. Don't look at others and don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Obviously, keep up with the Joneses is not relevant for people today. It used to be a comic back in a long time ago, back before I was born. There's a comic where this family tried to keep up with their neighbours. They wanted to be like them. So the term remained, it stuck. They say you'd keep up with the Joneses. So don't try and keep up with those that have other things, because what you're seeing is only what? You're only seeing an image of what their life is. You don't know what their life is like. You don't know how much debt they're in. All the stuff they have could be on finance, hire purchase, and you wouldn't even have a clue. They just like to put on that image that we're so rich, that we have everything. I honestly didn't realize till recently that some people carry purses that are $3,000 or whatever, even more. I was shocked. I was walking past someone I was at someone's house. I was someone that was related to me, and I walked past a bag. She said, "Don't go near that bag." And I said, "What is there, explosives?" She goes, "No, that bag's worth this much." Then I was thinking of all the lovely things I'd love to do with that bag. But you think about it, $3,000 for a bag. What does it do? Does it fly? What does it do? Nothing. And you couldn't even tell the difference. You wouldn't know. And the thing is, it could be a fake from China and you wouldn't know. Because no, honestly, if someone bought their spouse a diamond or a cubic zirconia, who could tell the difference? Who could tell the difference if I pulled out both stones? I'd probably buy a CZ every time and have no idea what they're selling. I couldn't tell the difference. How am I going to tell the difference? Even if you wanted to sell some item, put some fancy Italian or French name on it, and people buy it. This is how people function. So I need to be content with what I have. Man qani'a, as the narration says, lam yaghtam. Whoever's content, they will never have any of these worries. They'd have no worries because they're content. They wouldn't worry about this. They wouldn't have anguish. They wouldn't have distress. You need to realize that most of these social media love stories are fake. I deal with marriage problems. You have a couple that's all over. They're a famous couple. People look at them and go, wow, these two people must love each other to death. And then the next second you find out they got divorced. And you ask, but your life is celebrated on Instagram. What happened? And she says, you think so? Every time I had to take these photos, I'd force him to take the photo with me. And then he'd smile, the photo gets taken, and he does what he wanted to do. There was none of this was real. It was all fake. So I need to be content with what I have and how I live. They say once the Sultan had some servants, and one of his servants went down by the sea to get something. There he saw a Zahid, a poor man that was ascetic, a righteous man, and this man could not afford to eat whatever he wanted. Of the things that he was eating, he was getting kelp from the sea, seaweed. Back then they probably didn't make sushi, so he didn't know what the seaweed could have been used for. But he was eating kelp, he was eating seaweed. So when he went to eat the seaweed, the Sultan's servant said, come with me and serve the Sultan, and you will never have to eat seaweed again. You'll never have to eat this kelp again. So then this Zahid, this ascetic man, looked at the servant of the Sultan and said, come with me and eat the kelp, and then you won't have to be a slave to anyone except God again. Yes, you're getting what you want, but you're servile. You're subordinate to somebody. Be content with what you have. Don't be a servant to those that are around you. There are bigger issues today because for us, this contentment is a big issue because we live in the age of consumerism. You take a look at the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were people that would give in a way that you can never understand. When you read the verse, when they fasted for 3 days, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, They were fasting and they were hungry. And they gave this food while they desired the food. For 3 days, they gave it to a miskeen, person that was destitute, an orphan, and a freed slave or a freed prisoner. And they didn't ask for any reward. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. And they gave. And for years, this is the life that they would do. They would give. When you heard Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was martyred, one of the things that would make your eyes tear was the day when he was being buried. A poor man would come up to Imam Hassan alayhi salam and say, give me something to eat. He says, for I have not eaten for 3 days. And the Imam says, why haven't you eaten for 3 days? He says, well, a man used to feed me every day, bring me food, but the last 3 days this man has not come. And you'd know that it was Amir al-Mu'mineen that would go down and look for the poor people in the region and feed them and give them food. And even to the point when it came to giving in the way of God, in tadhi. Sometimes when it comes to sacrifice, we try and conceal and hide what's ours. On the day of Ashura, when it was time to give, Sayyida Zainab alayha salam had 2 sons. These 2 sons, they weren't elderly sons. We're not talking about grown men. These weren't men like you were saying in their 20s with families that were youth. When we're saying youth, youth in the real meaning of the word. They were younger than 15 years old. And these 2 sons, Zainab alayha salam had raised them to be fitya. Young, the youth, there were people in the way of God. There were righteous men that she had nurtured and raised. They were from the posterity of Ja'far al-Tayyar, the one that was martyred in Mu'ta and his arms were replaced with wings and taken to paradise. These 2 boys on the day of Ashura, when the companions had been martyred, they went up and said, Amma. They went to say, our uncle, to Imam Hussein, when is our turn to fight for you? Imam Hussein alayhi salam looked at his nephews and he looked at how young they were and he looked at his sister Zainab and he sent them back. He said, no, there's no need for you to come out, and he returned them to their mother. And then upon seeing them, Sayyida Zainab says, what is it with you that you have returned? Go and fight and protect your uncle like everyone else has. They said, oh mother, our uncle does not allow us every time we go ask him to fight. He returns us. He does not want to see us fight. So Sayyida Zainab calls for Imam Hussein. She says, oh my brother Hussein, what is wrong with my sons that you will not allow them to fight? Why have you not permitted them to fight? Why would you not allow them to be of those? Why can I not be one of the mothers that mourns over her children like all the other mothers that are present? I want to be one of those mothers that shares in this. I want to be someone that has put forth for Islam. I want to be someone that has given in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal and given her children. The Imam looks at Sayyida Zainab, al-Masa'ib. It's very difficult. If you look at the history of Sayyida Zainab, Sayyida Zainab at the age of 3 had her mother killed. At the age of 3, her grandfather Rasulullah was killed before that. And the most difficult thing when I think about is when she had to walk in the funeral of her mother and she had to muffle her crying when she was burying her mother so that no one knew when they were burying her in the night. She was present when her father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, had been struck. She was present when Imam Hassan had been poisoned and his body had been showered with arrows. And every time one of the martyrs fell in Karbala, Sayyida Zainab would come out to embrace the Imam and take the martyr from him. But at this point, when she sent her sons to go fight, and the Imam finally gave him permission that they went out there to fight. 2 youths, could you imagine, 2 young boys moving towards the enemy, and they fought back to back. They were together and they fought. And the only way that the enemy knew in order to control the situation is they segregated them. They split them apart. And when they had them each on their own, they took advantage of this point. So then the enemies surrounded them in the same way that they surrounded everyone else that they had fought before that, and in the same way that they would using their technique, their ways of ghadr and deceit, and they would strike them down. But the tragedy here is when Imam Hussein is called to take them. When he returns, the Imam is in a state of confusion. He cannot bear, and this is a time when he returns, the only time you'll find was Sayyida Zainab doesn't come out to greet him at the tent. She doesn't come out. Some of the narrators say she doesn't come out. She doesn't want to look into his face when he's carrying her children. She doesn't want to see his face, because imagine a brother bringing the slain sons towards his sister. So Imam Hussein is not able to do this. But oh, Abu Abdullah, she didn't come and greet you, but you were the one that had to carry your son Ali al-Akbar. You were the one that had to look in the face of Ali al-Akbar. You were the one that had to farewell Ali al-Akbar. You were the one that had to carry Ali al-Asghar and hold him, your own children, and they were killed in your hands. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. يا الله 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 اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك يا رحمن يا رحيم. Oh Allah, we ask you to have mercy upon our deceased. We ask you, Allah, to accept these majalis, these congregations from us, and make them a way for us past the Sirat into your paradise. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to cure our sick. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal not to take us from this world until He is pleased with our actions. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our Master, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام وعلى ورحمة الله وبركاته، وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والأرواح موتانا وموتاكم، ولقضاء الحوائج وشفاء المرضى نهدي لهم ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.